On April 19, 1989, at 9:55 a.m. local time, an open breech explosion occurred in the center gun of USS Iowa's Turret 2. The blast killed 47 sailors. They were our friends, they were our family, they were our shipmates. I'm David Canfield, and today I'm the Vice President and Chief Information Officer for Pacific Battleship Center, the organization that operates the battleship USS Iowa as a museum in the Port of Los Angeles. But on April 19, 1989, I was a 19-year-old third-class engineman serving aboard this vessel. Today I want to take a few minutes to dispel some of the common rumors that still surround the April 19th incident, these 33 years later. We don't come into the turret very often, certainly not into gunroom proper very often, other than to do necessary inspection work. This is pretty hallowed ground. I know that I have been in here once or twice, and I've brought some family members in who needed some closure. But I haven't been in here in about 5 years. One of the privileges I have is to work with a really dedicated and professional group of people at the museum. People who understand the emotion, who understand the sincerity, who understand what Turret 2 is all about. Some of these people were not born when the Turret 2 accident happened, but all of them work very hard every year to honor the 47. One of those is a shipmate of mine who is the ship's chief engineer, Mike Getcher, who has a few things to say from his last inspection in the turret.
So Mike Getcher here, Battleship Iowa. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, Chief Engineer for the ship, of course. And today we come to you in a very special place, a place that nobody really ever gets to visit. Special among our sisters, special, in fact, among all of the museum ships. We're inside the gun house of Turret 2. And as most people would know, back on April 19th, 1989, there was a horrible tragedy. It's a tragedy that's very close to us. You know, we don't let people in here for the most part. Just a few family members have been inside in the 10 years that I've been associated with the ship. But it's not very far from our minds and our hearts. It's always just a few feet away. In fact, my office is several hundred feet aft on the port side over here. So it's very much a part of our lives. And so we have a very different feel for it. There's a lot of stories, a lot of guesswork that goes on social media, a lot of questions, of course, and we can't answer all of them, including the big one, which is what happened. Nobody knows to this day. There's just not enough information available on the part of anybody to find out what actually happened. It's important to us that we not take advantage of the Turret 2 incident in any way. You know, we don't have any desire to open this up to guests in any form. What we focus on really are the 47 who were lost and the people who knew them, who were here that day, the family members, of course. Those are the people that are important to us, and that's really the main issue for us. It's not just about the turret, it's not just about finding out what actually happened, because we will never know. So this is a quiet, special place. There's always a little bit of light in here. We come in here just only rarely to take a look at different things, make sure that things are okay. And inside, of course, is the simple memorial, the names of all of the sailors and the wreath itself too. And with that, I think I'll close. This is an important and very special place to all of us, and it always will be.
One of the myths that I want to debunk is that we will somehow, someday stop honoring the 47. I want to be clear that as long as I am involved with the museum, and I'm certain as long as my co-workers on the senior management team, Mike Getcher and Jonathan Williams, the president, are involved, as long as these people who have lived through the last 10 years with me working here are involved in this endeavor, we will always have a ceremony here. We will always have a memorial service. We will always treat the memory of the 47 with dignity and respect, and we will never profit from it. I just want to underscore that we will never profit from the accident. We will never open Turret 2 as an exhibit. We will never open Turret 2 for tourism. This is hallowed ground. Another question which has been asked is how far the repairs have gone in the turret. I will tell you, I recently had a donor come on board who was the ship's one of the supervisors at the shipyard when the ship went in for repair. And he spoke with me at length about what the repair process looked like and what they were going to do and what they had to do. That work was stopped prior to the completion of the repairs inside the turret. So inside the gun room here, the optical rangefinder is missing, the computer is missing. There's a lot of equipment which has been cut out and not replaced. Much of the low voltage electrical was replaced. But the turret is not fully functional right now, and in fact, maybe we'll be able to cut to a still on the repair markings on one of the powder hoists that was not repaired. So despite what people might think, this is not a fully functional turret. It still would require quite a bit of repair to be made operational. Another one of the myths that we've heard revolves around 47 bolts that were removed from the top of the turret in order to honor the 47. Now, I've always thought that that was an interesting way to honor them by pulling a bolt out, but anytime the number 47 comes up, people take notice. But with that particular number, we've been up on top of the turret. There are only 45 bolts missing, and again, referencing that conversation I had with the shipyard supervisor, he told me that they had started work in the morning to, as he put it, crack the top or open the top on the turret to do some of the repairs that were necessary. And as they started that work, they got the phone call that did the stop work. We decided to decommission the ship. And so the repair work was halted right where it stopped. And at that point, they had removed 45 of the bolts from the top of the turret. So again, 45 bolts, not 47, and really just a coincidence, not in any way to diminish the memory of the 47, but certainly not done specifically to honor them. I want to address some of the more controversial rumors that surround April 19th. One of these is about the stability of the propellant. Now, we have a wonderful chief engineer on board Iowa in the person of Mike Getcher, who has taken a tremendous amount of time to research what the possibilities were on April 19th, and also to digest and read all of the information available from all of the various investigations. Mike has done a wonderful presentation talking about propellant and about how the bags are arranged, all of the nuance of the various investigations. But the one thing I want to address here is stability of the propellant. The one of a very few number of things that the various investigations agreed on was that the propellant was viable and that the stability was not an issue. A lot of us remember a different smell coming on board that came out in a lot of the investigations, how the powder smelled differently. But the investigations did agree on that, and those labs had no reason to agree or to cover things up. In fact, they disagreed on an awful lot of things. I'm going to reference some material that Mike has done. He has had the luxury of doing this research without the emotion of being on board April 19th, and that's something that I simply don't have. I will never be able to fully separate my own emotional involvement from April 19th and be able to be truly objective when I read things. And so I would really encourage you to look at the material that Mike has provided. One thing I want to be extremely clear about is that we will never know exactly what happened inside the turret on April 19th, 1989. The people who genuinely knew exactly what happened are the people who perished in the turret that day. All of the investigations came to different conclusions. They examined different bits of data, and honestly, the material where we could do a true forensic evaluation has been lost to time. So, to be very clear, we just will never know exactly what happened. There will always be speculation. We as an organization do not speculate, and I will tell you that personally, I do not speculate. The Navy's initial investigation concluded that what had happened in Turret 2 was perhaps the result of an intentional act by one of my shipmates. Out of respect for that shipmate and others involved, I am not going to mention names. The Navy eventually backed away from that conclusion, and I will read exactly the statement that Admiral Kelso at the time said. Admiral Kelso extended his sincere regret to the family and said, "There is no clear and convincing proof of the cause of the Iowa explosion, and the Navy will not imply that a deceased individual is responsible for his own death or the deaths of others without such clear and convincing proof." It is a pretty emotional thing to come into the turret. It is especially emotional for me to come into the turret. I haven't been in here in about 5 years. I am reminded of my first trip to Iowa and the time that really started me on the path to move away from my other career and work here on the ship. We were in the mothball fleet in Sassoon. I believe it was 2010. It was my first visit back to the ship since I'd left in 1989. And it was pretty emotional. And we were told that you had to have a buddy with you. It was all by flashlight. A lot of the lights were out, particularly in the turret. And just a couple moments stuck with me. One was I had come across the magazine between turret 1 and turret 2, and the door was open into the barbette, and because of the dehumidification, and I could see into the turret, and I remember headed towards it, and I had this guy that was with me. He was an Army reservist, nice enough guy, and he was trotting along next to me, and I remember going, "No, do not come in here," because even then it's like, this is sacred and hallowed ground. I'm gonna go in here. And I went in by myself. I climbed up here into the gun room, and I saw this wreath and plaque, and just dissolved into tears. I had not expected to see that. That is, I think, from the 5th memorial service in Philadelphia. And I remember sitting up here by flashlight and reading each one of the names out loud. I went home and I wrote about it. Some of you guys have read it. It's out, an article called Pilgrimage about my return to Iowa. It was really at that point that I decided that it was very probable that I would move from my career in Silicon Valley and see what I can do to make the museum go, and we've been able to do that recently. Appreciate everybody that supports us, does what we do here. Please know, this is part and parcel of who we are. It is not the whole story of Iowa, but it is a story we will never let be forgotten.